Today in Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch, we're going to talk about Deborah and Jael from the book of Judges, and I'm going to share with you a very yummy recipe for blueberry beckel. I'll see you in a minute, my friends. Friends, I hope you're having a good week. I hope it's going well for you and things aren't getting too crazy where you are. Today we're going to talk about a really great couple of ladies. I'll share with that for you in a minute. I hope that you've been enjoying our Bible study. We've talked about Sarah so far and Rachel and Leah last week, and there is a playlist available on my blog that all these Bible studies are going to. If you would like to, I would it would be great if you subscribe and share with your friends. Of course, my blog and vlog are a hodgepodge of things. It has been a home for all of the videos I've been creating for our church during this season of time. And so there's a lot of those on there. But that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's happened and what's going to happen in our story thus far. We talked about Rachel, as I said, and we talked about Rachel and Leah. And when our story ended last time, it was of Rachel dying, and Isaac, he had been reunited with his brother Esau, and his, not Isaac, Jacob had been reunited with his brother Esau and his father Isaac. Now the Lord had changed Jacob's name to Israel, so that's where we get the country name, the tribe of Israel. And in Genesis itself, here we go. We're going to continue on just a little bit of the story to catch us up where we are today. Rachel's son, Joseph. Keep in mind that Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife. Yes, wife. And Joseph was, by all accounts, his favorite son. And he was a little braggart, but he was, I'm sure, worthy of every bit of attention he got from his father. He was the one that Jacob had created the coat of many colors for. Well, Joseph's brothers weren't as enamored with Joseph, and they conspired to throw him in a pit, and later they sold him to a merchant traveling. Eventually, Jacob wound up in Egypt, and through God-ordained circumstance and situations, he became a very valuable part of the Pharaoh's government there. And as a result, when a famine came to the land of Israel, Joseph was able to bring his family, bring that tribe to Egypt, so that they could live through this famine. Unfortunately, they lived there longer than they needed to, and Pharaoh enslaved the Israelites, the Hebrews. And we have later on, we have Moses, who is used by God to set the people free from the bondages of slavery in Egypt. We all know that story, and how they had to wander the wilderness for 40 years because they had, not only had they grumbled and complained all the way, but they also had constructed gods, false gods, to worship. And so as we're inching towards our current study today, Moses' successor, his name was Joshua, was the one to actually lead the children of Israel into the promised land. And God has them scatter with their individual tribes, all of Jacob, Israel's children, their sons, were a head of a tribe. So all of these descendants came from one of those boys. So they're all scattered. And as we're going to see, a pattern starts to develop. Now we are going to be in the book of Judges. We're going to be in the book of Judges chapter 4 and chapter 5. Now Judges is the 6th or 7th. Let's see. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. 7 books of the Bible in. Some people believe it was written by Samuel. We don't really know. We do know it was written before the time of the kings, because it says a lot, and before the time of the kings, it says that a lot in the book of Judges. And some of the more famous judges you might know as being Gideon, Samson was a judge. Anyway, so what happened was the Israelites were to go in Canaan. They were to divide and conquer. They were to live this covenant, a godly life, pleasing to God. And of course, he had given them some rules and regulations to live by. The culture of the surrounding kingdoms, the surrounding peoples, were not necessarily something that God deemed as holy, and he basically wanted them to stay away from that. But no, they didn't. They would integrate into those societies. They would take their practices on as part of their own worship. And why was this a problem? I mean, well, for one thing, many of these cultures, and we're going to talk about the Canaanites in particular, they were polytheistic societies. They were not. We are monotheistic. We believe in one God. Well, they believed in multiple gods, and these gods were they're almost like the Greek and Roman gods, were very, very human in nature. And so as a result, some of their practices, some of their ways of worship were vile and disgusting, in God's eyes. And they would be in ours too. For one thing, the main god they worshiped was Baal. And he was the god of the weather, storms. He demanded even child sacrifices if things weren't going the way they should be. There was a goddess that demanded, fertility rites. There was all sorts of fertility customs. So institutional and temple prostitution took place. So basically there was a lot of subjugation of women and peoples, and this kind of immorality that took place in these worship practices. And so God would raise up a judge. Now this wasn't a judge in the idea that we think behind a bench with a bailiff and a jury. No, these were people that would be almost rulers, that would gather people together. They would pass on either for warfare, or they would make decisions as a group. They could have, there's many things that they could have done, but a lot of times these judges came up during times of great turmoil for the Israelites. So what would happen is that this generation would love and serve God, and the next generation would love and serve God, but they might allow this or that into, and then by the next generation they have forgotten God's laws. They are living in apostasy. They are doing all manner of things, and ultimately God would let them fall into the hands of a conqueror, or he'd be like, okay, you want to do it yourself, let's see how far you can get, and something would happen, so they would come in and be subjugated to rule of a certain group or a country. So in this case, we are going to talk about the Canaanites, and of course the judge at the time we're going to talk about is a woman. Her name was Deborah. And now her story comes in Genesis 4 and 5. I'm only going to read Genesis 5 because it's more like a prose telling of the story. But I'm going to talk to you the story itself so you can kind of understand when I read it to you from Judges 5. I am going to read with the King James Version for this, just because it sounds so awesome. But some study notes I have are from actually my Life in the Spirit Bible. It's an NIV version. You can see the corner of that, the edge of that. And so you can follow along if you so wish. Something else you need to know about the book of Judges is it's just all kinds of, you know, gore, and there's a lot of smiting. There's a lot of brutality with these folks in here. So this is no exception. I mean, this is the Desperate Housewives of, I don't know. I don't know. You'll see in a little bit if you don't know the story. So let's start in chapter Judges 4, verse 1. So it says Deborah, she's a judge of Israel. She's also a prophetess, which means that she doesn't necessarily, you know, sit and tell the future, but she has words from God that she passes along to her people. And so she summons Barak. And I don't know if it's Barak or Barak, but she summons in Judges 4, 1 through 11, she summons Barak. These people, her people of Israel, were being terrorized, and they might have been a little bit terrorizing themselves, of the Canaanites. And because it says in this is out of my NIV, after Ehud died, which Ehud's story is a story in itself. It says the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, a king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. And it talks about the commander of his army, which was Sisera. And he had 900 iron chariots and cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. And they cried to the Lord for help. And then they talk about Deborah, the wife of so-and-so, and she held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel. And so she sent for Barak and said to him, and this is in what verse are we in? 6. The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give them into your hands. Now Barak says, okay, I'll do it, but only if you go with, only if you come along. If you don't come along, I'm not going to go. So Deborah says in verse 9, I'm still in my NIV translation, very well, I will go with you, but because of the way you are going about this, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman. So it talks about, so Barak starts assembling his peoples, and it says 10,000 men followed him. Now in the Song of Deborah, chapter 5, it also talks about certain tribes. There were tribes that were very reluctant to get involved in this, and unfortunately we see some I don't think God looks upon that too fondly. There were those that were not willing to take up the cause of God. So let's go on to verse 11. Now this is important for some reason. You'll hear in a minute. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hoab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zananim near Kadesh. Boy, I could have a whole little comedy act just reading these Bible names. And so when they told Sisera that Barak, the son of somebody, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera gathered together his 900 iron chariots and all the men with him, and they went to this river. So then Deborah said to Barak, go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? That's good stuff. So Barak went down to Mount Tabor, and followed by 10,000 men. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword. So basically, and we can see, and you're going to hear in chapter 5 that really what happens was that all of these men came onto this plain. All of the chariots, the Sisera's army, came onto this plain. Well, the Lord sent just this massive thunderstorm and rain and a flash flood, which bogged down these heavy chariots in the mud. Now, when you're talking about all of these heavy chariots plus 10,000 foot soldiers who were not really a trained militia, you know, these were shepherds and men of the field and craftsmen. They were not, Israel at that time did not have a standing army. So God caused the rains to come, which, think about this, the Canaanites worshipped Baal, the god of the storm, but it was God who caused the storm to come, and the chariots got stuck in the mud. So then all of the Israelites came through and made short work of the Canaanite army, of Sisera's army. So now we get into some stuff. We are in verse 17 of chapter 4. Sisera, however, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there were friendly relations between Jabin, the kin of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord. Come right in, don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she put a covering over him. "I'm so thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." And she opened up a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. Standing in the doorway of the tent, he told her, "If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Barak came in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come," she said, "I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day, God subdued Jabin, the Canaanite king, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites grew stronger and stronger against Jabin, the Canaanite king, until they destroyed him. What a story! What a story. So basically, she's hanging out, and she sees Sisera running for the hills, and she says, "Come on in, I'll take care of you." Gets him something to drink, lays a blanket over him, and when he's fast asleep, she drives a tent peg through his temple. Man. She took care of him. So, anywho's, let's move on to the next chapter, which basically is a retelling. It gives us a few more clues, and it's done as this ballad. It's done as this storytelling thing that I don't know, it might have been sung, it might have been who knows, but it is truly, truly beautiful, and I hope I do it justice, and I also hope I don't completely mess up the words. So you can read along with me if you like. This is Judges 5. I am reading out of the King James Version. It says, "Then sang Deborah and Barak the son of Aboam on that day, that the leaders took the lead in Israel, that the people offered themselves willingly. Bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear. O princes, to the Lord I will sing. I will make melody to the Lord, the God of Israel. Lord, when thou didst go forth from Seirah, when thou didst march from the region of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped, yea, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, yon Sinai before the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shagmar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, caravans ceased and travelers kept to the byways. The peasantry ceased in Israel. They ceased until you arose, Deborah, arose as a mother of Israel. When new gods were chosen, when war was in the gates, was shield or spear to be seen among 40,000 in Israel? My heart goes out to the commanders of Israel who offered themselves willingly among the people. Bless the Lord. Tell of it, You who ride on tawny asses, you who sit on rich carpets, and you who walk by the way. To the sound of musicians at the watering places. There they repeat the triumphs of the Lord, the triumphs of his peasantry in Israel. Then down to the gates marched the people of the Lord. Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, lead away your captives, O son of Abinoam. Then down marched the remnant of the noble. The people of the Lord marched down for him against the mighty. From Ephraim they set out hither into the valley, following you, Benjamin with your kinsmen. From Machar marched down the commanders. From Zebulun those who bear the marshal's staff. The princes of Ishkar came with Deborah, and Ishkar, faithful to Barak, into the valley they rushed for at his heels. Among the clans of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Why did you tarry among the sheepfolds to hear the piping for the flocks? Among the clans of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he abide with the ships? Asher sat still at the coast of the sea, settling down by his landings. Zebulun is a people that jeopardized their life to the death. Naphtali too at the heights of the field. The kings came, they fought. Then fought the kings of Canaan at Tanakh by the waters of Magdidu. They got no spoils of silver. From heaven fought the stars. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The torrent Kishon swept them away. The onrushing torrent, the torrent Kishon. March on, my soul, with might. Then loud beat the horse's hoofs with the galloping of his steeds. Curse Mirzah, says the angel of the Lord, cursing bitterly in its inhabitants, because they came not to the help of the Lord against the mighty. Most blessed of woman be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, of tent-dwelling women most blessed. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought him curds in a lordly bowl, and she put her hand to the tent peg, and with her right hand to the workman's mallet, she struck Sisera a blow. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. He sank, he fell, he lay at her feet. At her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he felt dead. Out of the window she peered, the mother of Sisera, gazed through the lattice. Why is this chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the hoofbeats of his chariot? Her wisest ladies make answer, nay, she gives answer to herself. Are they not finding and dividing the spoil? A maiden or two for every man. Spoil of dyed stuff for Sisera, spoil of dyed stuff embroidered. 2 pieces of dyed work embroidered for my neck as spoil. So perish all thine enemies, O Lord, but thy friends be like the sun, as he rises in his might, and the land had rest for 40 years. So that is some story, some story, and there's so many things that we can take from it. Obviously, this is the whole book of Judges is kind of a warning, in a sense, to stay dependent on God, stay focused on God and His commandments to us. The children of Israel, the Israelites, and so like many of us do, allow things to influence us that should not be in our lives. And it's, time and time again, we cry out to the Lord for help. And, He's there, He's faithful. But boy, wasted years. So let's talk about, for one thing, Deborah showed great dependence on God. She was not willing to go unless God went before her. And she had faith that whatever God had given them into their hands to do, to deliver the Israel army, God was going to perform that. And we need to remember that too as well. We need to remember that whatever is God has given us to do, that He is going to provide the victory for us. Another thing we need to remember is that sometimes God calls us to hard things. Now, He is not going to call us with a spike, a tent peg, and a mallet That is not what he's calling us to. But certainly in our day and time, there are so many hard things, and there are hard circumstances and hard situations that we need to find that strength and courage of Deborah and Jael to do those things. I can think of a dozen things in my life that have required or still require so much more than I think I have in myself to give, and thank goodness that God is there to provide that for me. I can't even imagine. There's a lot of talk. I think a lot of us get on a soapbox. We get on something we feel very, very passionate about. We feel, and we think everybody needs to be right in there with us. I have a few of my own. I think that the things that we need to be passionate about foremost are the things of God, the things that God has put in our hands, the things God has called us to do. And we need to be passionate about His Word and His fellowship. Those are the things that we need to be focused on primarily. And how easy is it to let the influences of the world, the humanism of the world, to influence our own view of life, our own view of it's like the Israelites. They were always looking for something to help them without actually having to rely on God's strength, acknowledging Him as Lord and Savior. I don't believe there's one human person that can fix all of our issues. I don't think that there is one political party that can do that. I believe it's only can be a nation who is on their knees. So that is my belief, and we need to make sure that we are not putting all our faith and trust and hope in any one person other than God. So I think that's a great lesson for us today, and I think that what a good story. What a great story. I'm going to share with you now I said this last week, it's one of the most viewed recipes on my blog. It's the blueberry buckle. It is really just an easy, it's considered a coffee cake, and it's just a really easy, simple dessert cake to make. It's not as sugary or sweet. It's like a buttercream frosting cake. It's something that you can whip up in a matter of no time to be able to share with a neighbor or someone stopping in. It's really extra good for holiday meals. This is one I've made several times. If you are not a baker, I don't consider myself a baker. I mean, let's be honest about that. There will be like a recipe for like 4 dozen cookies, and I'll come up with 1.5 dozen somehow. And this is not because I'm eating all the cookie dough. It's just for some reason I'm just not a very good baker. Some things I do well, and a blueberry buckle is something I always do well. And it doesn't involve a mix. It just involves some few ingredients, and I will let you see it before I ramble and ramble and ramble. Be back in a minute.
So here's the recipe for the blueberry buckle. You will need 3/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of soft shortening, I used butter, 1 egg, 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 2 cups of blueberries. For the topping, you're going to need 1/2 cup of sugar, 3/4 cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 cup of soft butter, and you can even add nuts to this if you like. It's really good. So before I start cooking, I always make myself a cup of hot tea and light a candle. And today's tea, there's a big shot of blueberries. Today's tea is this yummy chai from Twinings. I'm getting all my stuff out here. You can see I have quite a collection going. I'm dumping my sugar into the bowl. I thought about getting a set of glass mixing bowls, but I sure like these stainless steel ones. You can just whoop the hooey out of them if you need to. Now I'm going to cream together my butter, my sugar, my egg, And this is a very important step when you are making something like this. You don't want to miss it. I need to explain the 425 on the oven behind us. The temperature for this is actually 375, but I'm cooking some bacon in the oven, so that's why you see that. I don't want to mislead you. Okay, so now I'm getting my mixer. Well, I think I'm getting my mixer ready. I thought about using my KitchenAid for this, but decided against it. Cracking that egg in there. I like to get everything I need out when I first start cooking, and then I put it together as I go. So here I go. I've had this mixer forever, and you can see some kind of nice blue sticker on there that's come on there somehow. So after I get that good and creamed, I'm going to add a cup of milk, and you can use any kind of milk, even some almond milk, some kind of nut milk. I'm just using what I have in the fridge. So here I'm going to mix it up again, and you're going to see why I don't use this mixer very often. Yep, there it goes. It happens to all of us, I am sure. That back in there. Now, this sifter I have had longer, I don't know, it's older than dirt, but I love sifting. You can sift actually with a whisk. It doesn't do a good a job, I think, as this, but I'm adding my first cup of flour in there and sifting up as much as I can. I'm going to add my second cup of flour, and then I'm going to add my other dry ingredients like my baking powder and my salt before I sift this up, so it sifts up nice and good together. And technically, because I used salted butter, I really didn't need to use salt in this, but I didn't think about it when I was making it, and it did just fine. It didn't taste too salty. There I go. This is the best job ever. If you have littles, they would really enjoy doing this. Now I'm going to add my liquid ingredients into this. Technically, I would do it the other way around. I would add my dry ingredients into my liquid ingredients. But because I was using this glass bowl from Pampered Chef, I thought I would, so you'd be able to see it, thought I would do it the other way. Now, notice I'm not going to beat the tar out of this. All I'm doing is making sure that the dry ingredients get mixed in with the wet ingredients. And this is one of the reasons why I really didn't need to use a KitchenAid. Because all I am is just kind of mixing it together. Now I'm going to add my blueberries. I'm going to fold them in so they don't get all smushed. A nice shot of my big white hand there. Kind of mixing it all together. You can add chocolate chips, all sorts of goodies to this if you want. Now, originally I had sprayed a different pan. You didn't see the picture of that. It wound up being a little too big for what I wanted. It would have been just fine, but the pan I'm actually using is it's a Pioneer Woman, and it's just a little bit bigger than a bread loaf pan. You'll see in a minute, but I wanted my pieces a little thicker than thinner, so you'll see that in a minute. So all I'm doing is scooping it out of the bowl, and I'm going to spread it around. Now I'm going to make the topping to it, and this has flour. I'm using a 1/4 cup there, but it really calls for 1/3 cup. And also, my butter was a little soft. It would have been a little bit easier for this step if my butter was a little colder. And actually, a good trick is to do chilled butter, almost frozen butter, in your food processor to make a crumb topping like this. But this turned out just fine. There weren't any complaints. That's some cinnamon. And now I'm going to start whooshing it together. What you don't see in there is I've added some sugar, and I'm starting to see it's a little bit of a mess, so I'm using my hands, and now I have crumbled it up on the top. It doesn't look perfect. Oh, little fly, but it does the job just fine. Now here it is out of the oven. It could have used another little bit to brown the top, but it was sure delicious. And the finished product there. You need to try this one. It's a really great recipe.
I hope you enjoyed that recipe. I have one coming up next week that I made at the same time. It is a biscuit scramble bake. It's just kind of one of those you throw together, and it's pretty tasty. It is not something I'm eating a lot of right now. These recipes I'm making for you, they are perfectly wonderful, but I'm on a healthy journey, healthy lifestyle journey. So I'm enjoying making these for you at least. But next week we're going to talk about Hannah, and I'll have to say that Hannah's story is one of the ones in the Bible that touches my heart the most, and I'm sure we'll talk about that next week. I'm also going to share a recipe for you for this good biscuit and egg scramble, and I will see you then. In the meantime, I hope you do beautiful things. I hope you hug your people and take time to breathe in and breathe out. You're doing just fine. I'll see you then, my friends. Bye-bye.